Why is your HIT, high intensity interval training, not working? And why might it be actually making you store more belly fat or making you exhausted? I've got the answer. Stay tuned. A really quick science geeky lesson, and it's this: that when you work out, your body will naturally elevate your cortisol, which is the energy and the stress hormone both. So that does go up while you're exercising. And if you exercise appropriately, it comes down below your resting when you started appropriately. If you go too long, you go too hard for your current status, that isn't happening. So something to note there. But also, when cortisol goes up, your blood sugar goes up. And that's on purpose. The blood sugar goes up so that it's released, so that your working muscles can use that fuel up. It's actually a positive. But here's the problem. When blood glucose goes up, so will insulin be released if there's too much of it released. If your body senses, oh my gosh, there's more blood sugar being released in the bloodstream, insulin will come in. Here's the problem with insulin. Insulin puts you in fat storage. Yikes, right? So what we've got to do is figure out where's the sweet spot where I can exercise really hard so I can kind of purge some of that cortisol, maybe get rid of a little bit of stress, and I can use blood glucose for the energy so that I have fuel to feed the exercise so I can work hard without that surge of insulin. We have to kind of sneak around the corner in order to make that happen. Fat burning, not fat storage. And as a woman in midlife, just because you punch that ticket, that gets harder. Here's why. You've heard so much for decades about high intensity interval training, and that began as Tabata, 20 seconds hard, 10 seconds easy, or total recovery, and you do 8 cycles of that. So it's about 4 minutes long if you do a true cycle of Tabata. Now, that was done, the original research, on elite male cyclists, all in their mid-20s, peak of performance, peak of muscle mass. So if you're a woman in your mid-50s, that may not work the same, right? You don't have the same hormones. We're not the same muscle mass. We're kind of really good at fat storage right now, even if we're not trying. So it's important that you realize that over time, we have found that for women over 40, definitely over 50, really in the peak of menopause turmoil and decline of estrogen, increase of cortisol, that doesn't work as well. But if you pay attention to all the acronyms, there's HIT, high intensity interval training, that's the original. But now we also know that SIT, sprint interval training, came out. A study came out in about 2020, might have been 2019, before the pandemic even hit. That was sprint interval training, and the way it was done with postmenopausal women on bikes. They were cycling, and they did an 8-minute warm-up, 8-minute cool down, and between they did 20 minutes of 8 seconds sprinting, 12 seconds recovery. Now just imagine, so that's, if you're doing math, 20 seconds for a cycle of that, so they did that 3 of those every minute for 20 minutes. So got probably a little bit tedious. You could not check out and do the grocery list. You had to stay. But what they found is women in postmenopause actually did lose overall fat, that's total adiposity, and visceral belly fat, and actually even gained a little lean muscle mass, which is really not heard of. That lean muscle mass came from the quads, which were doing the majority of the work on a bike. Now, might not have been true if they were on a treadmill or an elliptical, but it did happen there. Sprint interval training, tongue-tied, is also known with a little bit longer intervals, not just 8 seconds. Because I gotta tell you, unless you're on a bike, it's really hard to get yourself going. I mean, you could probably do 2 squat jumps, but if you can't jump, can't do high impact, it's gonna be really hard otherwise to get yourself working hard enough during that work level of 8 seconds. So if you can go 15 to 20, but no longer than that, that's the secret. So it's really just burst, get that big burst of exercise. Now, you could be doing squat jumps. You could be on a bike. A spin bike is going to be really helpful Also, harder to get hurt when you're doing it. So when you're doing fast, rapid exercise, I know a lot of trainers will promote burpees. Some of you watching, you probably love burpees. I've actually hated them for 41 years as a trainer. I've never, ever done them with any client, with any group of clients. I've never taught or instructed my trainers who worked for me to do it. And the reason is, there's about half a dozen things that could go wrong on the way down and the way up that could result in injury and really sloppy form. When you get going, doing as many reps as possible, within a minute, you get really sloppy. And we can't afford to get hurt, because if we get hurt or inactive, we're gonna lose more muscle and lose more bone. So pick the activities that you're gonna do that high intensity interval training with carefully. So you could do it on an elliptical, on a bike, on a rowing machine, jump squats if that works for you. There are ways to do it where you don't get hurt or reduce at least your risk of injury, and that's a really important detail. But let's come back to sprint interval training. What does that look like then if you're doing it? The important thing to remember is 15 to 20 seconds is the longest that you're going to do the work interval, and then you're going to recover for a minimum. Right? How nice to hear that for a change. Not a here's a maximum, now go again. We want you to recover so that you're totally recovered, so that you can go as high and hard as possible when you do the high intensity interval. And therein lies the key. So a lot of trainers are still having you come in or having you watch a video, and you'll see, even we in our membership, we still have some videos that live that dictate it. Here's your recovery. We're going again. And actually, I now tell all of our members, push pause. If you can't, close your mouth and breathe through your nose. You're not recovered yet. And if you're not recovered yet, you're not going to go either as hard or as fast, depending on what the activity is, and reach your capacity. And that's the important distinction. If you want to get more fit, if you want to improve your longevity, that's going to come from increasing your strength, increasing or improving your VO2 max. So pay attention to, are you going as hard as possible? And then allow yourself to recover, or the next time you will be saying, yes, that was really hard, but you may not be going as fast. You may not be going as hard or as much, pushing as much resistance, whether that's the level on an elliptical or the level of resistance on your bike, as possible. So that's a really important distinction. High intensity interval training, there's nothing wrong with it. And really all of this falls under the umbrella of high intensity interval training. We're coming out with a guide for women over 40 on the interval training and what really these names mean, what, regardless of what you call it, what you need to be focused on in order to burn, not store fat. But coming back, let me summarize. The really important thing is keep your intervals as short as possible, 15 to 20 seconds max. Recover at least 30 seconds or up to 3 minutes if you need it, so that you can go hard again. But that whole cycle takes, you're gonna do maybe 4 times of that interval. The whole thing takes 15 minutes, and that's the key. A lot of women think a little is good, more must be better, and we just need to erase that, delete, hit, no, not doing that anymore. So it is okay to finish your workout feeling good. And if you do, your brain is actually going to function better. So there's something to be said about high intensity interval training actually helps you cognitively solve problems better. You're more creative and you're in a better mood. But if you go too long, you can make even a high intensity interval training session turn into endurance. What happens during an endurance exercise? Cortisol continues to go up negatively and doesn't come down afterward, meaning you're in fat storage, breaking down the muscle, the opposite of desired effects. All right, ask me a question down below. And if you have a question specific to high intensity interval training, ask it now. We're about to publish this new book. If you're seeing this in real time, you can contribute, and we will have a section for frequently asked questions, and you may see yours right there.